resolution to adopt the annual plan. Can we move that up? Thank you. Comprising the draft, the Mayor's recommendations and changes set out in attachments C and G adopted by the resolutions above. And so this is the well, actually we might as well do the, or do we have to do them separately, each one? Okay, so I'll move that we adopt the annual plan, and Andrew seconds that. Is there any debate? Sarah?
It's got to be said that budgeting for an organisation with around 3,000 employees that keeps a city of nearly 400,000 ticking is no easy task. We need to do the basics: rubbish and recycling, drinking, waste and stormwaters, streets and lighting, and we also have conflicting calls and priorities from residents to build a stadium, fund heritage, the arts, events and sports, to rebuild a city and do it in a sustainable way that protects our future, to connect our communities and fund volunteer groups making a difference, to make our roads safer for everyone and to fix the broken ones, to provide homes for those who cannot afford one, to support new migrants and refugees, to protect our vulnerable biodiversity and improve waterways, to make inroads on years of neglect in our creaking and leaking drinking water reticulation, to encourage people to move back into the central city, and all of this while keeping rates low. They're all worthy causes, and they are all part of what makes a city a great place to live. It's a juggle, it's a balancing act, and we do our absolute best within the constraints we have. There's probably something in here that everyone will appreciate, and something for everyone to disagree with, and I think we've got it about right. Things do need to change though, and I expect our next budget to focus more clearly on the two key issues for our future: water and climate change. We have resolutions today that indicate our prioritisation of these issues, and I'm looking forward to getting on with it. Our planet is changing, and so must we.
Glenn?
Thank you. Just picking up on where I was before, but I watched the clock this time. Just back on the part of the rates that is the UAGC, you'll see in your document there that graph from 1985-86 onwards. Over that time, what hasn't been recorded is the fact that there were two amalgamations. So there was one of all the city councils in 1989, and then in 1986, of course, Banks Peninsula came into the... Sorry? Much later, was it?
Yeah.
96. No, it's not up. And
2007.
at some point in time, Banks Peninsula came into Christchurch City, and so obviously the number of rate units has increased over that time. So I have a few issues in terms of that percentage argument used over the UAGC. I made the points before over how being a flat part of the rates, it serves to disproportionately affect those living in lower valued homes. But roads and rates and the chlorine, which we are attending to and we've nearly got rid of, I think are the most important things for our community at this point in time. The roads are actually a measure, I would say, of community well-being now. And it is important for people to not be reminded of the earthquakes, but to be able to drive along a reasonable road. And so I'm glad that we've effectively got a delegation now for the community boards to choose to prioritise the most important roads. In housing, and as the chair of the housing subcommittee, we will need to do something about social housing. It did come out a bit wonky today, but whether or not you support social housing, if it's not provided for adequately, and even more than adequately, it will give rise to greater rates of homelessness, and that will be very apparent in the city. Conversely, when you do provide social housing, it keeps homelessness down. So it's an integral part of the overall housing system, and I appreciate not everyone supports social housing, but I think that's an important thing to be mindful of. It's a key part of our housing system, and it will have knock-on effects for this council, and any council actually, if we don't attend to it. One of our submitters was the Mayor of Selwyn. He said that they were going to leave plan changes up to private developers and anything else in the regional policy, well, that's where we can make a difference by promoting inclusionary zoning in that. So I look forward to that regional policy review in a couple of years' time or sooner, and being able to give effect to that then.
Pauline, Anne?
Yeah, thank you. Look, this has been a good process again and a long one. But today we have given staff some guidance on progressing prioritisations of roading, safety and other projects, reflecting the Community Board's submissions, including the Papanui Innes, we submitted on that, and the submissions from the public. I note and supported B7 in the Mayor's report that there's a balance of funding for regeneration, and I'll be looking for support for further investigations into the 10 Shirley Road site with a view to replacement community centre by way of further engagement with that community. The Heathcote Ōpāwaho works through their stormwater management plan, which is actually an integrated catchment plan, will also be strengthened from today by the direction to ensure strong community collaboration and participation. But I can assure you this is already happening through the Land Drainage Recovery Program, via the Zone Committee, community groups and also schools. The Land Drainage Recovery Program uses 6 values approach: ecology, drainage, culture, heritage, landscape and recreation, and integrates these in all aspects of flood reduction. And a fine example of that is the Bells Creek Pump Station and Filtration Plant that was officially opened last week, the second largest of its kind in the world. It will pump excess water in a rain event, but it will also filter the contaminants out prior to entering the Ōpāwaho Heathcote River. As a city, we still have a huge amount of work to do with huge expenditure to return to pre-quake levels, at the same time seizing every opportunity for betterment within existing budgets. We're doing okay, and we've got a long way to go. I'd like to thank our staff for all the work here today, and especially the transport team for dealing with the hot and cold movable feast as a result of the NZTA situation. Kia ora.
Anne Galloway?
This annual plan is responsive, reassuring and resets our priorities. It responds to the many submissions that called for the need to plan for the impacts of climate change, moving to net zero carbon emissions, protecting our drinking water and waterways. Declaring a global climate and ecological emergency has further intensified this response, specifically prioritising our water. Additional funding added to the global stormwater consent work reflects this. This annual plan is also responsive in allocating funding to the Multicultural Recreation and Community Centre for Christchurch, acknowledging and valuing the diverse needs of our community and tangibly addressing these post March the 15th. This annual plan reassures residents who find paying rates and a burden and challenge, and we have heard their concerns. Elected members and council staff have worked tirelessly to keep rates as low as possible, now at a new 4.79%. It resets our council focus on our core functions, maintenance and repairs, roads and footpaths, resourcing this with an extra $900,000 for this work. The whakatauki at the beginning of the Mayor's recommendations has this message embedded in it. As we make our way through these times, the goal is always there. These times are challenging, and this annual plan gives us direction and resource to reach our goal, which is to continue to build this city, a city of opportunity, one that regards its people as a taonga, to be treasured and encouraged, to work together using their skill and talent, one in which we can all participate in and be valued. On that note, I'd like to acknowledge our council staff. We could not have achieved this today without the team that sits around and behind elected members. Thank you for your tireless, passionate and committed work for this city. We are grateful. Finally, post-annual plan, I'm confident that many of the issues that my Hallsville residents are concerned about are being addressed through this annual plan. However, there are local projects that I've chosen not to address through amendments, acknowledging the integrity of the long process which has landed us here. a process that has involved hours and hours of work by elected members and staff and has given plenty of opportunity for debate and collaborative decision making. I look forward to advice from staff about enabling the use of the Capital Endowment Fund, for example, to achieve these ends.
Thank you. You're winding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy Chen.
Thank you. Yeah. Council received 250 the submissions, and also we heard 95 the oral submissions. So today we make decision. I always thought the budget is for our goal, for our priorities. That's very important. It's not our goal and our priorities to fit for our budget. So I'm very happy. Probably most of residents, particularly payers, they are very happy regarding to all the kind of rates. It's under control. The 5%, particular, even this 4.79, even is better than the draft the annual plan. That's fantastic. The other one is because this first year, all the operational expenditure, the amount is higher than the capital, the kind of the figure. What they mean regarding to this figure, it means we are back focused on our repairment, our regular maintenance, like a roading, like a footpath, like safety, like park, like reserve, and the flood protection, and some of the community facility, repairment, etc. That's very, very important, because we can review all citywide, lots of the roading, lots of the kind of park reserve, those maintenance is very, very miserable. So I'm very happy, we focus on this area. The other one is we take a positive response, particularly regarding the multicultural recreation and the community center. That's to listen to not only those three, Highgate College or Multicultural Council and the Refugee Council, actually this wider the multi-ethnic community, their request. So we take a positive response to listen to them. The other one I would like to highlight is implementation of the multiple strategy. That's very important, because we have launched this for almost 2 years. But how to implement this strategy more smoothly, more effectively? We become the very good model in the nationwide. We should be very, very proud here. But I'm concerned is the transport project funding, particularly regarding to the I mentioned earlier, Horseway Junction Road extension. That's very crucial project. I still recommend the staff can take a positive way, negotiate with those NZT. If it didn't work, we might review, consider, rather than just push out to 2026, because there's a bigger...
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Generally speaking, I still adopt this, support and adopt this the annual plan.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Look, I'm in general agreement with the annual plan that we've landed upon today. I'm pleased with the outcome for South Shore and South Brighton, although I'd like to express my great concern around continued requirements to consult over and over again. No part of Christchurch has ever endured so much consultation. Equity in the decision-making process is something that this community is screaming out for. The annual plan process has delivered a wide range of projects and funding for various activities. However, I do consider that there still needs to be a greater focus on core council business. Some decisions are nice to haves. It saddens me that some are patch protective or are made on party lines, a process not entirely conducive to the city moving forward. Having said that, an annual plan process is generally one where there is minor tweaking to an LTP. I'm generally comfortable with the annual plan that we've produced, and I'm absolutely delighted that we've had a average rates rise of 4.97 forecast for the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dion and Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm I just wanted to say firstly thank you to the staff. I'll say that outright. It's a huge amount of work, and this has been going on for a very long time to get to where we're at. And we can debate all these little things that we're debating today, but actually you guys have been probably debating a lot more behind the scenes to build up to the point that we're at today. So I do want to pass on my appreciation as has already been done. Through the process, we do win some and you lose some, but I'm relatively comfortable with where we're heading in terms of the capital program. When we came to the draft, I went through all of that, and there is an incredible amount of work going on in the city. It is a huge amount of stuff that the City Council is doing to get back to where we were before the earthquake, but also to be better than what we were before that happened. There's $500 million of capital program, but there's also almost $500 million worth of operational expenditure in this budget. That's a massive amount, and we really are running quite a big ship here. The one thing that I wanted to mention is the rates that we do bring in, and I wanted to put a bit of caution around, from my point of view, where we're heading in our debt. So after this annual plan, we will be approaching $2 billion worth of debt. As a city, we need to be thinking about that and actually going, how do we start thinking about other sources of income for the city, because we can't be bringing $520 million of rates every single year and increasing that by 4% each time. Before the earthquake, 10 years ago, we were $230 million of rates income. So there's a big change that's happened over the last 10 years, and as a councillor and as a city, I do think we need to be thinking about the income sources that we have and actually looking for a better way. But in saying that, we have to get on and do what we've got to do, and this annual plan does start to address some of those basics that we really are fighting for, especially those road and infrastructures, central city, and our suburbs. So, yeah, again, thank you, everybody.
Mike?
Thank you. What Dion said. No. But I agree completely with what Dion has said. Yeah. Look, this term I've previously voted against the rate increases at the annual plan and the long-term plan, as I don't actually believe the increases are sustainable. But the long-term plan set this year's rates increase at 5.5%, and we're here today with an increase sitting at 4.79. And although I believe it can go lower and wished it had gone lower, I think it shows that the council is listening and that we're actually moving in the right direction. This annual plan it's a bit of a mixed bag. There are a number of good aspects in it, including additional money allocated to our drinking water infrastructure and roading and footpaths. However, at the same time, there are a number of poor outcomes too. Delays to section of our cycleway routes, delays to public transport projects being a couple. And I guess if NZTA had been able to deliver the funding to our transport program that had been envisioned by the government's land transport GPS, we probably would have been in a much better place right now. An annual plan, it's a tweak of the long-term plan, and this is what we've done. We've listened and we've tweaked, and at the same time reduced rates. However, we do need to acknowledge that there are a number of important future decisions just around the corner, including our drinking water and public transport infrastructure. We need safer roads, a greater focus on the environment, and action on climate change. Today should be seen as a positive step forward, but while we head in the right direction, we must not lose sight of what lays ahead.
Thank you. Yanni?
Thank you. I think this is an annual plan, and so I know at the start of this process it was kind of like we just keep things going and we make very few changes. But what we've seen, and what always seems to happen, is we've got all these other things happening external to this process that have a huge impact, like the NZTA funding, for example, like the cost share refresh, like the Capital Acceleration Fund. And I think it's increasingly difficult for the community to have a say when we've got so many different processes happening in our city and so many different agencies that we're funding doing similar and maybe slightly different, but often things that duplicate each other. So, I think as a council, we've still got a long way to go in terms of reducing the duplication of agencies in our city, but this annual plan finally finally starts to address that with Regenerate, and that, you know, that's very, very welcome. But we also, I think, need to look at some of the other agencies that we're funding and for what, and ensure that we're not creating a duplication of agencies. The other thing that I'm really concerned about is people's comprehension of our annual plan and our budget. We still need to improve on our public participation so people can have a say. I think there's a number of projects in here that are going to be delayed that the community have absolutely no idea about. So we need to ensure that we've got some decent communication around that. And we need to start getting some ability for people to go online and access information in their local wards about the projects that are scheduled, and if they're not happening, to understand why. I do agree that, you know, we cannot keep putting rates up to the extent that we're putting them up. We actually need to talk to central government, and I think central government have said that they're trying to review the rates across the country, and that really needs to happen. We cannot just keep putting rates up for people, and we cannot at the same time face the huge infrastructure repair bills that we have post-earthquake without assistance from central government. So we really need to, I think, work harder with central government around fixing our infrastructure. There's a lot of luxury projects that we've got in the city, some in the central city, that I'm still really concerned about, but we'll obviously, as part of the cost share refresh, we'll have a chance to engage the community on that, which again is welcome. But fundamentally, I am concerned about the UAGC, where we're putting people at the lowest property values are getting about a 6% rates increase, and people with $1.5 million properties are getting about just over 4%. So I think we still need to look at the UAGC, and I won't be supporting it in this plan. But, you know, fundamentally, as a council, we need to set a budget, and voting against this budget today, even as others have said, there's things that we're not agreed with. Actually, we need to strike a budget as a city, or we would be unable to continue to function. So, you know, I will support it, but I think there's a lot more work we need to do around process and content.
Aaron?
Cool. I'm just going to mention a couple of things. People in my ward don't actually mention the UAGC very often. They mention the overall rates, but they don't mention the difference between what some people pay. They understand that some people have to pay more than others. Overall, the rates are going up at double or triple the rate of inflation. Our LTP has them going up by 50% over 10 years. They're actually compounding, so it's more like 63% over 10 years. It's not 50 because it's compounding. We asked for nothing in our ward this term. This annual plan. We would have asked for some traffic lights, but the process that got us to asking for traffic lights has taken so long that it'll be next year's annual plan before we might ask if that comes back, and that's what the public have asked for, and the council agree with the public, then that'll be in next year's annual plan. So I look forward to that discussion if that happens, and I'm lucky enough to be at the table again to keep talking about traffic lights for another 3 years. Not happy about the rate of inflation, but I'm just going to touch on Dion's point about how we raise money, and we can't keep taking money off people, especially the massive growing elderly population who are on fixed incomes that can't pay these rates. We can't go to the government, they're broke as well. We have to be smarter as a city. We sit on particular assets, and I'm going to raise one now. I'll get glares and I'll get sneers, but it's water. We leak a phenomenal amount of water. If we were selling that and not letting others into the game, if any water ever being sold in Christchurch was owned by the people of Christchurch and the benefits went to the people of Christchurch, we would literally have no rates. We don't need to take any more water out the ground, and we can be environmentally sustainable, not put anything in plastic. You can use cardboard, aluminium, recycled glass and cornstarch bottles. That would be a really smart way to use an asset that flows out to sea or currently gets leaked all over our streets. We could then fix the ailing infrastructure. We could have better social housing. We could have free public transport. We could clean up our waterways because we would have the money to do it. Let's start being a little smarter as a council and looking for opportunities and options rather than closing our minds to possibilities. I'm not saying it's what we should do, but we should talk to the public of Christchurch about it. That's what our annual plans and LTPs should be about. And next year, I hope we don't have an an annual plan. I hope next year we have something that looks more like the share an idea discussion, which would then set the following year's LTP. That's the kind of future I hope for my city.
James.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak around that, the UAGC. As you're all aware, though, the UAGC is simply not at the level it was. Everything else in this world has moved apart from that. So rates in the UAGC certainly aren't at the level that they were. But I don't think people generally have a problem with things being uneven so long as they're fair. And I think the issue that we all have and all need to appreciate is that the rating system that we have really isn't hitting the mark on fairness. So capital values of property are really not a good indicator of people's ability to pay. They're simply not. So I have a significant problem with rates rises. The city has a significant problem with rates rises. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think fundamentally local government in New Zealand has a significant problem with rates rises. But the fact of the matter is the place to address that is going to be in the long-term plan. You're not going to be dealing with that in an annual plan. These are the tweaks, not the fundamental shifts. So I'm obviously, like everyone around this table, you're not happy that you've got everything that you've wanted throughout this process. But I think we've struck a balance and I think we've worked well together. And if I'm lucky enough to be around the table next term, I most certainly look forward to playing a part in addressing a fairer system in the rating department.
Anyone else? No one else? Okay, right. Well, I'll wind up the debate. Thank you very much, and thank you for the considered way that everyone has contributed to the discussion and throughout the process. And again, I will reiterate what others have said and thank staff for the incredible amount of work that so much of it goes on behind the scenes that we don't see the hours that go on, and we know that people have worked in particular times, night and day to try and get the detail sorted. The key messages, there are some key messages that have arisen out of the changes to the 2019-2020 annual plan, which was the plan, the year two of a long-term plan. So, and as we know, we took a relatively steady as you go approach. We took an approach that pretty much it was to be as it was. It wasn't going to be an LTP process, a special consultative procedure. It was going to be a standard set of changes, some things that we had to address. So, and I just want to focus on the two of those: protecting our drinking water supply and improving the health of our waterways while keeping the rates increase below forecast levels. And I think we did set an objective to try and get the level of rates increase below the forecast levels. We have achieved that. I often make the point that the rate of inflation that we look at in terms of what's presented by the Reserve Bank on a quarterly basis, it is not the rate of inflation that a council is faced with when it deals with construction projects, because the rates are quite different. But I think that to have as an objective some discipline around the level of rates increases related to the rate of inflation that the council faces, I certainly do think that that should remain an ambition for the council. In terms of the two related issues, or not so related, the need to get chlorine out of the water, but equally importantly, once we've got it out, to keep it out. And I think I've made this point on many, many occasions. We actually have to focus on what central government is planning in this space. I haven't made the odd trip to Wellington without purpose in terms of reinforcing to them the view of Christchurch. And let me just read directly from the statement that I put to the beginning of the meeting today. We are committed to providing safe drinking water that is good to drink In Christchurch City, that means without a chlorine residual in the network. We consider mandatory chlorine treatment to be an unnecessarily prescriptive approach that is not supported by evidence from drinking water supplies across the world. We are confident that we have identified the key risks to safety of our drinking water and will have appropriate measures in place to manage that risk and ensure good public health outcomes. And that is the position of Christchurch. It's been communicated loud and clear to Wellington, and if there is a change in the regulatory framework that says otherwise or does not allow for us to meet the objectives of demonstrably safe water without residual chlorination in our water, drinking water, then that will be an issue that I'm sure the people of Christchurch will communicate to central government loud and clear. The global stormwater consent. People often don't realise, again, the incredible effort that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that the detailed work is done to actually get us across the line. This is an extraordinary effort. This is 5 years worth of work in terms of getting this global stormwater consent. Now we have to make good on our obligations to deliver on what we said that we would do, and this budget provides for that. So I think the two aspects of our water commitments are absolutely core critical. In terms of the climate change issues, what I've taken the opportunity to do is actually go through the full range of activities that are already being undertaken in terms of climate change leadership and actually list them so that we've got a clear understanding that we are well on our way to achieving our own target as a city, but more importantly through the redevelopment of the climate change strategy to talk to the wider public about what is an appropriate target for the city as a whole. That's what we said that we would do, and that is what we are continuing to do. So that stays very much at the forefront of the work that we were going to do. I haven't got the timer on myself, but I will be disciplined. And just conclude, because I'd like to answer a few other things that have been said. I think that we do need to be very open with the public. I think the review of the annual plan process, I think we also need to think about how we put information into the public arena. And I wasn't going to respond to one of the councillors' suggestions around water, but if we are going to have a discussion with our public about water and whether the council itself would want to enter into the business of water bottling, I actually think that we actually have to have all of the facts in the public arena before such a discussion takes place, because the last thing that we want to do is to raise people's expectations that cannot be delivered. We cannot bottle water ourselves. We have a consent from ECAN to take water for our drinking water supply. We would have to apply for a separate consent to take water for any other purpose. And there is actually currently a ban on taking water from where we take our water from for any other purpose. What has been happening in the wider field is that we have had existing consents transferred, and that is the subject of court proceedings, which I won't go into here. The point that I'm making is that it's really important that if we are going to debate issues with our constituents, then it's really important that we provide them with factual information and not sort of whimsical ideas about what might be a possibility if the government made a decision about what was and was not possible in relation to water that we do not own and water which we currently have to apply to ECAN to use ourselves. So I'm just making that point. The last thing that I want to say is that the draft annual plan was released on the 1st of March, just 2 weeks prior to the 15th of March attack here in Christchurch. And as an organisation, we have commented, well, I've commented on this before, that the organisation had to really stand up and prepare for a whole range of things, supporting the family and community hubs, preparing for and providing support for the burials, organising and providing security at the range of events from the call to prayer to the National Remembrance Service, supporting community vigils, hosting international delegations, supporting access by national and international media. And the point that I made at the outset of this is that that may have been a cost, but can I just say that it is also very much an investment in what the outcome has been, which is the focus on how the city and the nation responded to the events of March 15 and the incredible strength and support that that has given to our Muslim communities. And that has been the feedback that I have been receiving at every single one of the services that I have been to. I attend another one on Sunday for 4 of those who lost their lives, and the response of the city and the nation has been that it has provided a wraparound support. So I don't want to think of us every time we think of costs, just to think of the output, to think of the outcomes as well. And in this case, I can assure you it's an absolute investment in an important part of our community that is going to be part of how we're going to resolve some of the bigger issues around the multicultural strategy and other issues going forward. So thank you very much for the way that everyone has contributed to the debate. I think that there's a lot that we can be learned from each process that we go through, and each time we know that we will do better next time as well. So on that note, I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And so that opposition to the annual plan in total, Aaron Kewen. Thank you. So that's carried, and then we move